Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We really value the time you're giving to attend our first ever Cohorts for Courage Youth Advocates Public Forum. My name is Taniza Islam. I'm the Executive Director of South Dakota Voices for Peace. And as we start our program tonight, I would like to invite one of our cohort members, Mercedes, to do a land acknowledgement.
Hello. Land acknowledgements can take shapes in many different forms, sometimes performed by local elders, if done in an indigenous community, or by a white person as a way to pay homage and take some personal responsibility to learn about one's current homeland, or by someone wanting to expose others to a process to learn more about the indigenous communities that came before us. I offer up this land acknowledgement to pay respect and invite others to use the practice as it makes sense for their own personal gatherings. As we open up our event tonight, let's acknowledge that we are all on the homelands of the Oceti-Sakowin, the Seven Nation Fires, the Great Sioux Nation, the current homes to the 9 sovereign tribes. We are all sitting on stolen land at this very moment. A statement I do not take lightly, and I hope that neither do you. Some have tried to silence the indigenous community with hate and poor rhetoric. Fortunately, the collective voice is something that will not be eliminated and is only regaining strength and power by the day. And as a supporter and ally of this movement, I am here to say that I stand up with those who see injustice and not only want to stop it, but correct the wrongdoings. I commit to learning more about this land and its people and to do the work to be a good ally and co-conspirator. When given the opportunity, I will show up, sit down, listen, and take action when appropriate. I commit myself to actively dismantling white supremacy by any means necessary. I commit to being held accountable for my actions and to have the grace to admit when I am in the wrong. With this statement, I commit to having the capability to grow and adapt every day. In conclusion, I would like to use this acknowledgement as a call to action and a reminder that words only hold so much meaning and power. There are plenty of incredible Native-led organizations that would gladly take our contributions and/or our community support by way of advocacy and action. Each of us have something that we can contribute to honoring and supporting Indigenous-led initiatives here in the Dakotas. Thank you.
The mission of South Dakota Voices for Peace is to enable healing in immigrant, refugee, and Muslim communities by lifting their voices and walking alongside all those who are fighting bigotry in our state. As we've continued our work since 2017, it became really apparent that there's amazing people across our state who want to join hands in fighting bigotry wherever it shows up. However, the common theme was we don't know what to do, or there's not that many of us in our town where we would feel comfortable stepping up and out. So with the great minds we have at our table, we got together and formed the Cohorts for Courage program. And it's really to concentrate on specific sectors of our community to equip them with strategies that we use, such as media training, such as writing op-eds, such as understanding how to lobby, how to do research on bills that are coming up, how to collaborate with organizations who have the same mission, but for different people. Our first Cohort for Courage were Christian faith leaders across the state. We had about 25 people who were part of this cohort, everywhere from East River all the way to West River. And it was such an amazing experience to see all of the conversations we were having as a team come to life, and having lay people and clergy come together to really want to be educated on Islamophobia and anti-immigrant and refugee bigotry specifically, but then understand how that impacts other communities as well, and take those tools back to their communities to figure out how they could have these difficult conversations, but more than that, which is to take action. And one of the groups I love to highlight is West River and Rapid City. Out of this cohort, we had a faith and justice collective that came together, an interfaith justice collective. And it's just been amazing to see their work in Rapid City in just this past year. We also organized faith leaders here in Sioux Falls around the mask mandate when the city council was looking into that more. And they held a press conference, and it was great to see that the tools that they took from our program is what they were implementing. So similarly, after the murder of George Floyd, all of us came together to really talk about what next. What is next for Sioux Falls? What are we going to do as leaders of color, as communities of color, as a community as a whole, to tackle these really difficult issues? And I personally was so inspired by the young activism that I saw during the Solidarity Gathering, during all of the other solidarity movements that took place in Sioux Falls. And it gave me inspiration because even in a small community, even in a community that is having growing pains, in learning how to be more inclusive, that we saw activism in a way that we haven't seen, at least I haven't seen since I've been here for 10 years. And then during legislative session, we saw young youth of color from our high schools appear via Zoom to testify in peer to Senate committees on why they should pass laws to ban discrimination against hair texture. And it failed. But the thing that inspired me the most was that group of high schoolers that came to peer via Zoom. They didn't take that as their answer. They then went to the school board here in Sioux Falls. And I said, those are the youth that we need on our side to equip them with strategies on how to continue this work in their journey of activism. So here we are with Cohorts for Courage youth advocates, and simultaneously we have one for K through 12 educators. And we hope to continue these cohorts with more people and also think about more cohorts. For us, for me, as a person of color and an activist of color, we really recognize that having separate spaces for people of color and white people is critical in having honest, open dialogue. And so this was our first group of young people of color who came together. And over this last week, we learned a lot. We learned a lot about our concerns, our hopes and our dreams for this city, and what we think our place is in effectuating change. We learned about public policy. We learned about what level of government we have to engage in with the expertise of Janet Brown, helping us learn those things. We also learned about gerrymandering and redistricting and how our state is grappling with those ideas right now and the ballot initiative that's taking place. So if you're interested in signing to get that on the ballot, there are petitions in the back. You can sign on your way out. But we learned how all of these issues are so interconnected, right? How the census is interconnected to redistricting, is interconnected to power, is interconnected to what we're seeing in peer. Then we also heard about intercultural competency and what that is. Many of us didn't know that even existed. So really being able to put words around and concepts and theories around things we were already talking about was really great, and we had the honor of having Willette Capers provide that education to us. And then we heard from guest activists across the state. In Rapid City, we heard from Natalie Stites-Means, who's the founder of the Hey Sapa Voter Initiative, in doing just critical work with COVID relief for urban Indians there. And then we heard from Linda Duba on what her strategies are and what she's hoping to accomplish and how she needs our help to get there. And I spoke about our work at Voices as well, and Willette also spoke about her journey and how she got to here. So our group today has identified issues on their own. This is their public forum. So they've identified issues around education, which is a big umbrella, we know, but they're going to go into it. And they've identified issues around transportation and accessibility to healthy foods in our schools. And so there are two groups who will be presenting tonight, and we are very grateful to the South Dakota Humanities Council, who provided a grant for us to be able to do this particular program. And so as a part of the grant requirement, you have in front of you an evaluation, and we need everyone to please fill that out on their way out. They really would like you to actually get on your phones, and we can carve out some time for that, and go to the hyperlink that's on your page and just do it online. If you're unable to do that, feel free to fill out the paper form. All right. So without further ado, I will hand it over to the Education Committee to talk to us about what they're thinking and how they want to effectuate change.
Well, hello, everyone. Before we start, I do want to take the moment to introduce all of us, starting with me. My name is Rashida Mohammed. I'm a recent 2021 Lincoln High School graduate, and I will be attending Augustana University in the fall.
Hello, my name is Haimnada Sefa. I'm going to be a senior at Roosevelt High School.
Hi, my name is Susanna Geber-Kidan, and I go to Washington High School.
Hi everyone, my name is Lorena Diaz Martinez, and I just graduated from SDSU in May.
I would like to say that another person was supposed to be here, but she fell a little ill, so she couldn't come. But her name is, she helped us a lot. So her name is Jada. So clap for Jada, everyone.
Yeah, so welcome, and thank you so much for taking the time to be with us here today. All of us up here, and a couple of them on the chairs right now, are present today because we care. We care about the health and safety of our community, as I'm sure you all do, and we consider Sioux Falls to be our home. We're also here because we are the future of this city, along with the thousands of other students in our education system at the moment. And in talking about that, there are a few things that we would like to see addressed in regards to inclusion, to the growing inclusion of our student body in regards to public transportation and food security. But before we start, I want to see if anyone here can tell me the diverse makeup of our Sioux Falls School District. Linda? Yes, that is correct. So according to the 2020 district demographic report, we are currently sitting at a 60-40 demographic makeup. So 60% of our students are white and 40% are BIPOC, meaning Black, Indigenous, and other students of color. And we are noticing that as we go down our education ladder, we are getting more and more diverse. And this was said by Dr. Brian Maher, which was our past school board superintendent. And he said that our elementary schools are more diverse than our middle schools, and our middle schools are more diverse than our high schools. And this new cultural diversity is something so beautiful that I believe we should all take the time to celebrate, because it's beautiful to see that in our halls, and it adds so much more color to our schools. But it is also something that we should be more considerate and deliberate towards, right? We need to be asking ourselves what we're doing to make sure that all students of color have the same opportunity, right? As well as checking in with our students of color and providing them the right equipment to succeed in a school and faculty that does not look like them or have gone through a little bit of what they have even gone through. So we and hundreds of students alike are wondering, what tools are we giving our teachers to provide the right resources to our students so they can also succeed and make the change that they want to make? Are they fluent in the cultures of these students? Do they know the proper way to address discrimination and conflict between their students? Are we making these students feel seen, safe, and heard in their classrooms? And if not, what steps should we take to prepare for our growing class? I want you to be thinking about these questions as we move along our presentation today. And I will actually be taking us straight into our next slide. To begin, we're going to talk about one of the biggest issues we see our minority our minority students deal with, and that's none other than discrimination and racist remarks. So a study conducted in 2012 by Eric Anthony surveyed 1,522 teens from all races ages 15 to 25 and determined that those who belong to more disadvantaged groups based on race, gender, socioeconomic status, and sexuality face more discrimination, which is a no-brainer, right? But how can we see that those same findings in our own schools, right? So we actually have a few personal statements to share with you guys today.
In 8th grade, I was confronted by a teacher about joining a gang in front of all my peers because I was wearing a blue shirt and a plain blue headband. I was also called the N-word multiple times on multiple occasions. I didn't tell the teachers because I didn't think they would care. In another occasion, a white student in my AP class talked about how slavery wasn't that bad and how technically it was the slave's fault. There weren't any actions taken by the teacher to hold the student accountable, further solidifying my belief that the school staff don't care about my safety and well-being.
Okay, my experience was in elementary school. In elementary school, a peer made a snide comment about how I'll never have a white person's hair. Later on in middle school, my peers would jokingly stick items into my natural afro hair. Also, during my freshman year, a white student asked me why the N-word was offensive and proceeded to call me the N-word to get a reaction. I never told the teacher because I didn't think they would believe me. A year after, in my sophomore year, a white student was allowed to wear a Confederate flag sweater to school, despite reports of discomfort by BIPOC students in my school. When confronted, the student proceeded to openly call BIPOC students derogatory insults. That's where my experience ends.
So stories like these are prevalent in the BIPOC student community. It's not just these two, it's hundreds and hundreds more in Sioux Falls and nationally. The quicker we take these stories seriously, the quicker we can find a solution to them and start working towards an answer and a better school day for our students.
Following a similar train of thought, the next issue we'd like to bring up is teacher racial bias and how it has an effect on BIPOC suspension/detention rates, as well as the lack of trust BIPOC students have on their teachers. According to a study published in 2020 by Mark J. Chin, many teachers have more racial bias than we may think. Out of the 764 teachers in the study tested nationwide, only 7% demonstrated little to no racial bias. That is about 1% of all the teachers tested. Black students in counties have also been proven that they have an 8% probability of being suspended, both in and out of school when the teachers have less racial bias, while white students had about 2 to 4%. So there is a big gap in that. That is a problem that needs to be addressed in itself, but this leads to a much bigger problem of BIPOC students being more likely to miss out on instructional class time, which plays a role in hindering their chance to complete a quality education. According to data gathered by the U.S. Department of Education and Office for Civil Rights, Black students alone are nearly 2 times more likely to be suspended without educational services compared to white students. Black students are also 3.8 times more likely to receive 1 or more out-of-school suspensions compared to white students. Due to this disproportionate rate of suspensions, BIPOC students are more likely to miss more school days than white students. According to federal data from the 2015-16 school year, Black students nationally missed out on 103 instructional days per 100 students enrolled due to out-of-school suspensions, while their white peers only lost 21 days. Missing out on this amount of school is very detrimental to academic success of these BIPOC students. We can all testify that it is very hard to catch up on class with the rest of the class after missing only 1 day. So imagine what it's like if you miss a month or 2. There's also proof that racial bias causes a rift between BIPOC students and school authority. A 2017 study done by the University of Texas at Austin examined 483 U.S. middle school students' trust in their teachers and its relation to disciplinary treatment. The students were Black, Hispanic, and white. The study found that overall trust in teachers decreased for all students from 6th to 8th grade, but declined faster for Black and Hispanic students than it did for their white peers. Furthermore, the study found that students who lost more trust in their teachers were less likely to fulfill on-time enrollment at a 4-year college 6 years later. This not only asserts that racial bias causes BIPOC students to lose their trust in their teachers due to mistreatment, but it also ruins their chances of them pursuing higher education in the future. So racial bias in schools is essentially demolishing the chances of BIPOC students having a stable future. This is a drastic systemic issue that we need to dismantle immediately for the better future of the overall BIPOC community. Thank you.
Another common issue that was discussed while we were thinking of all of the issues that we've seen in the school district in Sioux Falls is that there are no different perspectives in the curriculum being taught in classrooms. Students are not learning about their peers who are sitting next to them, their values, their norms, or their culture, which makes it hard for people to try and understand and learn about their peers. Speaking from a graduate perspective and now working in the real world, there have been many instances where I have encountered people who do not understand why I do the things I do or say the things I say. I attended elementary, middle school, and high school in Minnesota, and all of the issues that we are talking about today are also relevant in other states, which tell us that this is a national issue, not just local. Sioux Falls is what I now call home, and coming from immigrant parents, education is highly important to me. It is important for all students to learn about other people's values, norms, and cultures, to try and understand why they do the things they do and say the things they say. Like I mentioned already, we have these issues in elementary school, middle school, and high school about racial discrimination. And to me, it seems a little bit crazy that there are a lot of large businesses spending thousands of dollars in diversity and inclusion classes because these same issues are occurring in workplaces as we are experiencing in grade school.
Yeah, so I also have an example of this lack of representation being done in our schools. So this is an anonymous story, but I'm gonna say it in the first perspective. So in our sophomore year in English, I think we're assigned To Kill a Mockingbird. And there are a few instances within the book where the author uses the N-word. And our teacher was reading the book out loud to us, and instead of skipping over the word or using the N-word, she decided to go ahead and say it. She was a white teacher, by the way. And I was super shocked listening to her. So after class, I decided to go up to her and ask why she said the word. And she replied back saying, well, it would better help us understand the gravity of the word. And I bring her story up to say that the irony is not lost on me, because how are we allowing words like these to be used in our classrooms for the benefit of understanding while simultaneously withholding history and context about those same words and students? So Lorena, how do we fix this?
Yes. So starting off, we can fix this by incorporating diversity in the lesson plan, which is a big key to classroom connection between the teachers and the students. The classroom environment is important for fostering cultural awareness, but teachers should ensure that diversity is represented in their actual lesson plan. For example, broaden history lessons so they can encompass the world beyond just the United States history and culture. Another example would be including more diverse authors in classrooms with the books that are being read or taught or discussed in the lesson plan. Using references and analogies to other cultures in their lessons and assignments to help students with diverse backgrounds personally connect them to their peers and teachers. Another great strategy is bringing in diverse speakers to add varying points of view and real-life context to different subjects. There are several ways teachers can ingrain cultural awareness and diversity into their lesson plan, and it will vary depending on the cultures represented in the classroom and the courses they are teaching. Regardless of the subject, teachers should always try to present and connect lessons to real-world issues. It is easier to promote cultural awareness within a teacher's lesson when there is a real example for students to relate to. A lot of the time we hear about the disconnect between teachers and their students. And as we know, communication is the key to many relationships. Teachers should try to maintain ongoing communication throughout the semesters. Every so often will allow teachers to consistently improve how accessible the classroom is to everyone. And lastly, the benefits of teaching culture in the classroom are as follows. Students become more empathetic. Students gain a better understanding of lessons and people. Students become more open-minded. Students feel more comfortable and safe. Students are better prepared for a diverse classroom and workspace.
Okay. Yeah, being a minority student is hard, but being a non-English speaking minority is much worse. In my own experience, I was mockingly asked if I really thought I was going to go to college after mistakenly asking the teacher if she spoke English when I had meant to say that I didn't understand what she had been asking. The teacher was unable/unqualified to adjust to a non-English speaking student. This happened in 4th grade, but still affects the confidence I have in my academics to this day, even as a senior in high school. I would like to state that I only tripped over myself due to my discomfort with the teacher, not because of my own incompetence. I am able to speak around other people and read, but due to my experience with the teacher, I was never able to perform as highly when in a space with her. This also addresses the problem of ELL students not being afforded the opportunity to interact with the rest of the school, as they are kept in one part of the building, the E-wing in my school, which keeps them isolated and overlooked, which is probably why I heard over the summer that a few teachers from a few different schools have been talking about their ELL students outside of the classroom. The ELL teachers had talked about subjects such as deportation of these students, and I was also informed that name dropping had been involved. My question is, why a teacher would feel comfortable enough to have talked about such a heavy subject? Are ELL students so undervalued? In the article, The Pervasive Problem of Linguistic Racism, written by BBC, and an Ethiopian accented staff member had reported that his colleagues frequently interrupted him during Zoom calls, commented on his unintelligibility of his English, and excluded him from meetings. He became so self-conscious that he would only use the chat feature instead of speaking up. Employees of color had been treated differently. They were being spoken to disrespectfully and were treated as though they weren't competent enough to hold their positions. And their opinions and suggestions weren't taken seriously. The investigation ultimately led the nonprofit to introduce employee training and periodic HR check-ins to try and remedy the issue. This type of bias can take significant psychological toll. Dovichin's research shows that many people who are shamed and excluded because of their language develop inferiority complex and start to believe that they're actually less intelligent. At worst, linguistic racism can lead to deprivation in education, employment, and housing and health.
So as grappling as all this information may be, we haven't even begun to scratch the surface. This is just our experience. I can't speak for the rest of the students in the education system. These issues are also imperative, they're hindering, and they're happening right now. So what do we do to combat this? Our solution, it's called the Inclusion Initiative Director, or committee. And a few of the roles and responsibility we see this committee doing is working as the middle ground between teachers and faculty and BIPOC students in situations of conflict, right? And this would help restore the trust teachers and BIPOC students have between each other. It would help with the disconnect that they obviously have. It would reduce detention and suspension rates and would make sure BIPOC students spend more time learning in schools and not out of schools. And then again, it would just restore the trust between teachers and BIPOC students, which is a very, very important thing.
Another responsibility or role this committee would have is to potentially develop workshops and training for teachers in charge of a large population of BIPOC students. This would help address teacher qualification issues regarding how teachers treat ELL and other minority students. This would also help address teacher racial bias issues because the board can educate teachers on not how to act on their biases. Although everyone has racial prejudices and biases, some careers simply cannot afford to act on them due to the repercussions that they may cause. As Trevor Noah said, some jobs simply don't allow bad apples. Imagine if we use that logic with pilots.
Help advise faculty and school board on pressing issues impacting BIPOC students and represent them. This would make BIPOC students feel supported and heard. Create a program to increase BIPOC culture fluency and class education. This would potentially diversify our curriculum and broaden student perspective. Read more lecture and literature and across the board, across the globe.dd. Faculate culture celebrations for students of color.
With all this being said, we are more than aware that this initiative might not solve everything. When dealing with students of diverse backgrounds and other students, there are many nuances that we will not always be made aware of. And it's going to require more care and time to solve all of this, because racism and discrimination was not created overnight, so it's not going to be fixed overnight either. So our solution might not be the end-all be-all to abolishing race issues in our school, but it's a start. It's here to get you all thinking of not only the problems, but the possible solutions that can be put forth in place to address them. Research has shown that students encounter less discrimination and bias at schools that have a stronger commitment to diversity and inclusion. And in concluding our presentation today, we would like to remind you that the minority population of the Sioux Falls School District are more than just numbers, statistic, and photo op opportunities. We are students of this district. We are members of our community. We are the next leaders of tomorrow, and our voice matters. We want equitable opportunity and a future in our education. We want graphs like these to not be a thing, and we want those numbers erased. But we cannot do this alone, and nor do we want to do this alone. So please join us in this fight for a more inclusive, anti-racist, and colorful school district. Thank you.
I feel like a proud mom or proud teacher right now. Just a big round of applause for the first group. And I want to really name the courage it took all of you to do this presentation and to share the experiences that have impacted you, and to hear it from your mouths and know that there are probably many other students who feel the same way is really heavy, and really something that we need to take action around, because there's just so many things that feed into how we're shaped as young people and what we think about our teachers, our community, and those who will stick up for us. So thank you for your courage in your amazing presentation. So we were going to open it up for question and answer, but because of the time, I would like the next group to present, and then we can just kind of open it up for dialogue and see where the night takes us. So the next committee here decided also on issues around education, but broke it more specifically into food insecurity and accessibility and public transportation. So I'll hand it over to you all. Who's first?
I'm not first, but we're doing introduction first. Okay. So first, we're going to introduce ourselves as a group, just like our previous group did. My name is Mercedes Anchondo Corral, and I am currently finishing up my credits at SDSU and in the process of applying for veterinary medical schools.
My name is Gopala Corral. I graduated from Lincoln in 2020, and I'm just now a cook over at Bread and Circus.
Hi, I am Laura Santos Alvarez, and I'm a sophomore at Washington High School.
Hi, I'm Kirtana, and I graduated from Augustana University in 2020, and currently I'm working at Stanford Research.
And I'm Durana Watts, and I will currently be attending STI in the fall.
So we focused on food security, food accessibility, and transportation for our part of the project, which also ties into education. So the resources of education, food accessibility, and transportation supports the youth and allows them to focus on education, their education. Food accessibility, youth are supplied with local, healthier food to enforce better habits and better growth, both inside and outside of the school environment. Transportation needs to be reliable and consistent for students to allow them to be able to get to and from school if they themselves do not have a car or have a parent unable to take them to school, and also be able to have transportation to maybe their own jobs or other places that they need to get but have no access to get to. So our presentation will delve deeper into both of these subjects, explain the issues and our solutions. All right. And then, so for our first part, for the food accessibility, we're talking about Farm to School. Farm to School is a program in South Dakota that affects you, whether you know it or not. If you have grandchildren or children in school, or even if you want to just be at a peace of mind to know that the next generation will be healthier, then Farm to School is important to you.
So I would also like everybody to take a moment to realize that South Dakota and the Midwest in general prides itself on being farmers, ranchers, and those are the people. So it's interesting to keep that in the back of your mind throughout this entire presentation, because there's also going to be some information. It's going to kind of blow you away. So like Opala said, Farm to School is important for children, because children, youth, high schoolers, college students, everybody, this is what creates our community, our future. And it is something that not a lot of people are aware of or knowledgeable about, and it's something that you can start in school with, starting to learn about food accessibility, how to prepare food, where to source food, and it also affects things like local economy and also just overall health in general. So the main areas of the Farm to School would be serving local fresh foods in school cafeterias, implementing school and youth gardens, whether it's at schools or community centers where children have this accessibility. And then, like I said before, encouraging students to learn about the food system through in-class activities rooted in educational standards. And this would also include things like farm tours. And there's a lot of local farmers in this area, just around Sioux Falls and Brandon, and all of these areas that schools could go and they could see, and they, you know, their children could be touching the dirt and being like, this is where my food comes from. Because there's a large community of people who don't know where their food comes from. There's a large community of small children who think, my food just comes from the grocery store and that's pretty much it. That doesn't seem very sustainable, in my opinion. So there are organizations, one of them is named Dakota Rural Action, and they are currently implementing more farm to school programs. They have actually created a task force which combines both state and federal accessibility to local foods. And so this isn't something that would just stay at a school level. This would also be something that would be able to be implemented into homes with low income families and low accessibility. So it's not just the idea of just serving it at school and then it stops there. It's implementing it to be a lifestyle. So like I said before, that there is a task force in South Dakota that is now creating the culture of better health for the South Dakota school system. So economic growth, just talking about farmers keeping the money within our community. So for every dollar spent, up to $2.16 is put back into our local economy. So that's a lot of money if you think about $1 to $2.16 in an overall. And that can get up to $1.4 million just for a case-by-case basis, just for one farmer working with one school. So these are things that could improve our community with things like transportation or better education. These are all things that deal with our community because it's the money staying within our community. As far as health benefits, when schools offer things like gardens in schools or local fresh vegetables, we're talking about a 44.2% increase in students eating vegetables, which is pretty crazy because you would have to think about where children are starting where they're not eating that many vegetables to begin with. And we will discuss later on about lunches that are being served in the public schools. And then also when children are or have the capability to have local foods and fruits and vegetables in their schools, they're wanting to try these foods and vegetables. They're enjoying them. They want to make them a part of their own life. And so with that, they are increasing their fruit and vegetable intake. So going back to that thing about us South Dakotans being farmers, being ranchers. First, 90% of South Dakotans eat less than 5 servings of vegetables per day. So if we're thinking about that, and if we're thinking about how many fields we see out there, and how are we all eating less than 5 servings of vegetables and fruits a day. South Dakota high school students are some of the worst ranked in the entire country for fruit and vegetable consumption. So what does that mean for our health, our future, as far as diabetes, obesity, and things of that nature? And then also, for each $100 increases the per capita of farm sales. Like I said before, the country level obesity rate declines roughly by 1%.
Why is food important to schools? Lack of food can intervene students' learning. A healthy breakfast/lunch can help children stay alert during class time. School children get up to half of the food they need at school. Students are likely to have fewer absences and attend class more frequently. Why do up to half of students not eat school lunch? Many students provide something called a la carte. This provides students cheap knockoffs of greasy, sugary, high-calorie snacks. Many students prefer to eat these disgusting knockoffs because it's the only option they have besides the low-quality school lunch. Personal experiences.
As someone who has graduated Lincoln in 2020, it's safe to say that I have never eaten lunch there. Partially because I would sit down and I would look around and see what the students next to me were eating, and it was truthfully very disgusting. It was horrid to look at. It was enchiladas with half-baked tortillas and this weird cheese sauce, and it was stale. I don't know how it was stale, but it was stale. There was canned peaches that looked like they should have been thrown away a week ago, and cafeterias are actually giving out expired chips. Something at Lincoln that was a thing was whenever an industrial bag of Fritos was expired, they would just hand them out in the cafeteria in the morning, and students would walk around through the schools and eat these chips. And like, they're stale, they're bad, they're expired. They're not for students. They should be thrown to the chickens. They should be in the trash somewhere else and not being ingested by human body.
Okay, so as from what you can see, this is a normal school lunch from a local high school here in Sioux Falls. Let's be honest here. Does that look appealing to you guys? Okay. So this is a lunch that has been served. Literally the only good thing here are the crackers. That's it, nothing else. And this is also the milk that is served, the same exact brand and everything. Many students also refuse to get milk along with their lunch because many students, even at Washington High School, have grabbed milk, opened the milk up, and the first thing they see is chunky, spoiled milk. or chunks of ice just floating around. And when students open the milk up and they taste it, many students have reported a funky and sour taste to the milk.
So, how can I take action? How can you take action? So, what you can do is you can call your local legislators and your school board members and ask them what they're doing to support farm-to-school programs in your area. You can join the farm-to-school task force that I mentioned before and contribute your knowledge, talents, and ideas to the program to expand it across the state. If you are a local foods producer, contact your local school districts and food service director and ask them about growing and raising food for their school cafeterias. If you are a gardener, ask your local school district on how you may be involved in implementing and maintaining school gardens in your community.
So next up is public transportation, or just for other students as well. So what we have is the Sioux Area Metro, or SAM, and currently is the only public transportation system in the city of Sioux Falls. It's 12 fixed scheduled routes from 5:45 a.m. to 8:45 Monday through Friday. And then on the weekends, on Saturdays, it's 7:45 a.m. to 6:45 p.m. And for 16 and 19-year-olds, 53.7% of them have jobs. They are employed. And so how can we make sure that these people who don't have cars are able to get to where they need through public transportation? So how can we improve our public transportation for school and higher education students?
Okay, so now I'm going to throw some numbers out, okay? So let's first talk about what we already have in the Sioux Falls area metro system. They have some good programs, and some of them are SAM on Saturdays, which is also known as SAM on Demand. And this program is basically free for all riders, and on Saturdays you can go on the app and you can book your route and you can just ride for free. Again, like Gopal mentioned, it is limited for hours. Then we have a wonderful paratransit system in the city of Sioux Falls for people who have accessibility issues, and we have a wonderful system placed for that. The Pass It On program is actually specifically for people who are in the lower income range class, and also for homeless individuals. These individuals can actually go to this SAM area in the downtown area and can get a pass and ride for free throughout the city. Then we have the Freedom Pass, which is specifically for summer students and something that we are very interested in. And this is for K through 12 students, and this is running from May 23rd through August 27th this year as well, where K through 12 students actually can ride for free throughout summer. So we have these wonderful programs set, right? So then what is the problem? Why do we think it is an issue? Well, all these programs are not actually very sustainable. Like we have the Freedom Pass program that is only led for the summer. So what is the issue? The issue is low ridership and low funding for the Sioux Falls area metro system. And being the only public transportation system in Sioux Falls, we need to do better in giving our students better modes of transportation in the city. Now, before I get into the stats, I want to raise of hands as to how many of you have ridden the SAM system. Yeah, I know. So not a lot of people. So actually 64 people actually said that they prefer their own vehicle, which is wonderful and fair. But there were also that other 31% and 29% of the people that couldn't use the system because it was not convenient for them and because the service was not available in the areas that they were living in. The reason I put this here is that even though we have only 21% of people using the system, we do have a growing city. We have city that is growing and really expanding with a lot of people coming in. And with unemployment rates only 3%, and we are doing pretty well there, I think we need to do better in terms of providing that transportation system to people who do need it. Okay, so this was an interesting, and by the way, all this data has been taken through the city of Sioux Falls, and this study was done in 2016. Now I put this particular graph in here because I love graphs, and I thought that was hilarious. So this is basically to show what would increase the ridership in India. Not in India, I'm from India, sorry, sometimes I put that in. It's so false. So one of the things that the riders mentioned was running these buses in the evenings and on Saturdays and Sundays. And actually, the SAM on Demand program is a pilot program. So what we can do is go to the Public Advisory Board or Transport Advisory Board and tell them this is a wonderful program. And we'll talk more about that later on. Then better informed to use the transit system. The transit system is available, but how many of us really know how to use it? The first time I used it, I was standing at the wrong bus station for 2 hours. My best friend hated me for it. She told me not to do that, and I still did it. Anyways, I listened to her later on. Then there are some other things that riders mentioned that why they would use the bus system, and some of them being more stops, more closer to their destination. One thing that was very interesting, providing incentives to their employees, which also I would like you to keep in mind. Then the last one I thought was very interesting. This was in 2016, and people said if the gas price goes up to $5, they'll ride the bus. Guess what's the gas price right now? $3 if you don't get the premium gas. We're halfway there. So we really need to improve our Sioux Falls area system. Now, going back to this funding issue, what is the issue? Why don't we have this funding? Why are they not able to do better? Clearly, the Sioux Falls Area Metro wants to do better, but they don't have funding because in the past 5 years, the federal capital funding for transportation has been decreased, meaning the state of South Dakota hasn't really applied for a lot of, or the city of Sioux Falls hasn't applied for a lot of federal programs that we do are available. Most of our funding for the Sioux Falls Area Metro comes from the city of Sioux Falls, and some of it comes from the state of South Dakota Transportation Agency as well. But that's about it. That's really what funds the Sioux Falls Area Metro system. So they're having a really hard time to really increase and make this program better. So one thing I really put in there was this K through 12 free rides in Omaha. And this is a program that Omaha initiated in 2020. And this program is actually going fantastically right now. And what they mentioned is that it has improved their community bond, it has kept their money in the city, and it has also increased the number of participation of these high school students in outdoor programs and after school programs, which is amazing. But why that was interesting is how they did that is because of you and me. It's actually the community that came together and put in an endowment and funding and worked with a lot of corporations to start this program. And so again, we'll go back to that later on. But now I'll pass it on to Lorena for her personal experience.
My personal experience with the public transportation system here is I really cannot stand it because first of all, the hours are bad. Why is it that, all jobs are 24/7, but the bus route is limited when we all need to get somewhere, on a certain time frame? And the simple fact that there's not enough information regarding the bus route, how do I know where to go when I want to get to Walmart? How do I know where to go when I'm, getting off of work? And let's not talk about the time that it runs every, 30 minutes? You miss the bus because it's just not set in motion correctly. And coming from, a bigger city where it was always public transportation 24 hours, you rode the bus no matter what. And you get here and you figure out, oh, I want to take the bus, but, it's 9 o'clock and it stopped running. Now I got to, figure out a ride or, how much money do I have to afford, cab fare, Lyft, Uber, whatever it is. I got to come out of pocket because I missed the bus. But yeah, it's a lot about this transportation that really, it's eating at me right now. But let's talk about some solutions on how we can fix this thing, because we talk about the education, we talk about the food system. Let's talk about the transportation on how we can, get the kids to the school and how we can, get them to where they need to be rather than cutting our hours at work. Because, yeah. So we can, expand it by Freedom Pass program, route expansion, run multiple buses at the same time, because why is it that one bus go and then the next bus come, and now I'm just standing here without transportation because I missed the correct bus stop? And then we don't even have covering for the bus stop. I'm standing, in the sun, and let's not go there, because it's a lot that this transportation system has an effect on us, whether we know it or not. And we don't talk about things like that because we overlook them in the process of other things. But yeah, we need more security in the transit system too, because it's a lot of crazy people out here, and due to COVID, we got to stay safe, whether or not we like it or not, mask up people. We need to, because there's a lot of sickness going around, and you never know like what somebody have, and it's easily, to get something just by being next to somebody. And yes, this transportation system, it really needs to be fixed, because we just don't know. We just don't know, y'all. Here you go.
Okay, so then where do we get the money from, right? Like we talked about all this. So we propose looking more into these federal grants. A lot of public transportation federal grants are actually very specifically focused for smaller cities and development of smaller cities. So let us go out there. There are actually 33 of them that specifically are focused for small cities. I went through all of them, I did. And then starting endowments, like, consistent endowments through the community, bringing our bigger corporations together and working with them. We have a lot in Sioux Falls that we can do. We just need to go out there and keep talking to people and keep talking to them till the time they say yes. So another thing that you all can actually do is to go to the Public Transit Advisory Board. It's on the fourth Monday of every month except December's. And they actually sit there and they hear public out, and they hear what are our problems and what can be done. And actually the SAM on transit system, actually the Saturday, SAM, why can't I think of that name? But anyways, the SAM on Saturday system actually came about from one of the public members that really specifically went and talked about it to them. And the city of Sioux Falls actually came up with its budget for 2022. If you haven't looked at it, you should go and read it. There's a lot of good stuff out there. But one thing that they did do is that put out some money for a coordinator for public transportation and the transit system specifically in Sioux Falls. So reach out to that coordinator and reach out to them as many times as you can till the time they listen to you to improve the transportation system. And I think we can make that as a better system for all of our students. As someone from Augie who got free SAM system, I loved it. It made me independent. And although we all are laughing about our experiences right now, since we have really good sense of humor, but it was tough first navigating the system. And having that free transportation system, I cannot explain was how valuable to me and my friends who did use that system. So we are really hoping that we can just expand that to other students, K through 12, and other college students in Sioux Falls.
As discussed in the previous slides, we can make some better improvements to our public transportation system. As many students depend on public transportation to get to school, many students don't have access to transportation. Many students can't always depend on their parents or guardians 24/7, considering the fact that many parents or guardians have jobs and can't keep up with their children's transportation to and from school. From there, many students rely on public transportation system here in Sioux Falls. Many students can't even afford to keep on paying bus fare through the whole year. Therefore, many students are forced to stay home, missing out on their education. This can also be considered as one of the main issues in our school's low attendance rates. And this should conclude our presentation. Thank you.
Good job.
Awesome. You guys did such great research, and the personal stories, again, are just so powerful. So thank you, through your humor, sharing those stories that have impacted you. But most impressively, the solutions that were brought up. It gets daunting to think of all the issues, but hopeful with the solutions that you've presented. So we have 10 minutes, and if we'd like to stay longer, whoever can stay, that's great. But we'd like to open it up for dialogue. As you're thinking about these issues or what experiences you've had, what advice you have to our students, what advice we have to the grown-ups in the room, how can we work together on some of these solutions. So I'll invite the other group to kind of come over here too. Now we have 2 mics. And so who would like to ask a question? Yes. Go ahead.
So thank you, all of you, for your hard work and your presentations tonight. I am wondering, you mentioned for the group who talked about education, I work at Southeast Tech and I just started as the new director of access and workforce opportunity. One of my biggest goals is to start reaching our youth earlier rather than waiting until they're freshmen, sophomores, juniors, seniors, to say you do have the potential to go to college. And so as you discuss this initiative, this inclusion committee, I'm really interested in learning more about where you're at in the process of developing it, if it is in the works, if it's not, how can we partner, and we, the adults in the room, the business people in the room, how can we partner with you to help you develop this and implement it?
Okay, so at the moment, this is an idea that we came up with in the past week. So we're not that far along our process, but we have begun talking to some of our legislators like Linda Duba, our superwoman, and we've started speaking to Taniza Islam, who also has a cohort of Courage for Educators, and that's gonna help us plenty because one of our things is that we want to talk to our educators, right? And we want to develop workshops for them so they can listen to us or they can do their own learning. But we would love to work with you if you would want to work with us. Yes.
Yeah, there's something else that I would like to add. During my time at South Dakota State University, I served as a part of the Latin American Student Association. And a big conversation that was brought up is that we do not see a lot of people of color at these universities, at these state universities. And what can we do for these students to higher their education? And a lot of the conversation that was brought up is that students of color do not know if they have the resources or those opportunities to further go in their higher education. So something that we have talked about is students like the Latin American Student Association, I know we have the Black Student Alliance, are bringing those groups to high schools here in Sioux Falls and around the area and talking to the students of color, letting them know that we're here, that we can help them. If they do want to attend higher education, we are here for them. And we encourage that because we do really need those people of color in all the workplaces.
Yeah, so reach out whenever you want to. We're here. And we're going to continue working on this because it's important and it's a growing issue.
who had to attend the opening of Jefferson High School. So I've already asked her, I will be the liaison with your group, and we'll start organizing that right away to work. Because the initiatives that the school district introduced today fit very nicely with what you spoke about. So I want to say that. To address that issue of students of color furthering their education, we finally, in this state, put $200 million in an endowment fund, which is going to be available to all students across the state of South Dakota. So that's going, and it's going to be not just for four-year schools, but also for technical schools as well, technical education. So I want to say our job now is to make sure that we're communicating effectively to all students who know that they have opportunity. But finally, to your point, how do we get more kids involved? We need to be down in those middle schools. And we need to be identifying those kids that are coming out of grade school into the 6th grade and saying, I can give a rat's butt about math, but I really like to work with my hands. So that is, I know that's something that Dr. Jamie Knoll is very interested in, and he's an administrator in the district. And those are ways to do that. I actually worked in the school district for the last 3 years as well, so I have a little bit of knowledge. But we have tremendous opportunity here, and you guys are a key catalyst, but it's a partnership, as I told you on Friday, and we need to build those connections. So thank you for your efforts today. Farm to school, love it. Love that idea. We had a little garden over there at LBA, but we need to grow that program. So let me know how I can help.
So we are doing this Facebook Live, and so we have some questions online that I will just open it up for whoever wants to answer. So from Trey Mendez, we have, for education, how would the committee be chosen? Would it be impactful to have an adult committee that the students can lean on?
Do you want Susanna? Sure.
Well, it would have to be an adult committee because they would have to serve within, like, think of it as like within the office of like principal's assistant or whatever, where they can actually be someone who can represent us in situations where we can't be there. So it would have to be adults. How would they be chosen? That's like more qualification based, as well as like it would. This is something that would take time to develop, find people, but definitely something that's going to be stable long term.
Yeah, so like just like Susanna mentioned, it's definitely going to have some adult educators and administrators on there, potentially maybe a school board member who's on board with this idea. But we also know that students trust other students. So maybe we do want a student on this committee who students have a close relationship with. So we'll start thinking more on that, but we're already working on it, so we'll get a more decisive answer later.
Thank you so much for all of your work. I learned a lot this evening, and I'm going to put it to good use. I am a former school board member and a former state legislator from Brookings, and then I've kept very active in other issues, including recently Medicaid expansion. My question is for you. You know, decision makers, that's where it's at. When you get at the table, you're able to drive that conversation, and you know, the conversations that you are all working on. How many of you, I mean, you're already proven leaders, I see that, but how many of you will go on to pursue some decision makers, you know, sitting at the table? And I want to encourage you greatly to do that, to run for offices. So I'd love to hear if you've thought about that at all.
I guess I'll start. You know, that is something I've thought about before. I've done stuff like that before. I've learned recently. I have been trying to learn more about our state government and, you know, who's really making these decisions that impact us. I recently, this summer, joined Girl State. That was a really eye-opening experience. But my true passion personally is to go into the medical field. But if I do get the chance, I will make sure that my voice is heard. And if I do see something that I don't like, I will make sure that I tell it to people who can make that decision better.
What? I thought you needed it. So I am new to the Sioux Falls area, and this is actually the first time that I've ever really wanted to get into local government and local change. Just with seeing, change comes from seeing something that's wrong and wanting to right it, essentially. And I think this program has really encouraged me to do so. One of the ideas that was brought to the table that we did not discuss tonight was decriminalizing marijuana. And now that I have learned the skills and met people and now have the resources to do that, I do plan on continuing to see that process through. And there are I think all of us have passion and commitment and desire to change things that we see in our community that are not right, that we do want to change, for sure. And I think that this program has definitely given us the skills and just the information. When we were talking about gerrymandering and all of these things, and just the statistics that Amy shared with us of our state is pretty insane. So getting that knowledge out into the community, I think, is really important. So.
Sure. Yeah, I really don't mind, being a voice for the community and everything, because as y'all can see, I'm really passionate about this public transportation thing. I will not let it go because it just bothers me that I forgot to mention it don't even run on Sunday. It don't even run on Sunday. So to the people who work 24/7, I do apologize for no transportation. But we're gonna try and fix this thing, increase, the membership of employees. I don't know what we gotta do, but as Keith and us stated, there is a city council meeting, and I really don't mind, going to one, because we need to fix this issue, not just for us personally, but for the parents who can't get their kids to school on time or can't even get them to their after school activity. So I definitely wouldn't mind, talking about it. I start school that day.
Nothing warms my heart more than telling people what date and what time to show up at the local committee meeting. Thanks, friends, for that. So as we get close past 7:30, I just wanted to remind everyone to please fill out the evaluation form. That's a requirement of the grant that we've received, and we'd love to continue to get more grants from the Humanities Council to continue this critical work. So if you're online, I dropped the link to the form in the chat box. So please feel free to fill out the form online as well. They would actually prefer that you do it online, and the hyperlink is on the top of that sheet. And to end our question and answer and comment period, I would like to hand it over to Sia. So, how long will the farm to school thing take? Because that sounds like a good idea. And if it takes very long, will it still be available in middle schools? Because
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's awesome.
even at my school, which actually has kind of good food compared to a few of the pictures I saw, it still doesn't taste the best.
Yeah. So, the amazing thing about this program, Farm to School, there is a national network, the Farm to School Network, that is already in place. It is just about getting South Dakota involved in this amazing program. So that's when you have to tell your mom and your dad, your aunt, your uncle, your grandma, your sister, your cousin, your friend to go to your legislator, go to your people and say, this is what I want. Because it's true, they are to serve you, and this is part of your community. So these programs are available and they are there. It's just us as South Dakotans to stand up and say, this is what we want, and this is what's important to us. Because there are farmers out there who are gladly willing to do this. I don't have a timeline, and I apologize for that. However, the faster that we get people to learn about these programs and start contacting people, the faster that it will get. And it will be for middle school and high school and all the schools. really for that. But thank you for your question.
Thank you. And so one of the strategies we learned is really mapping out who all the stakeholders are in these issues. And even though the program is done, South Dakota Voices for Peace's commitment to furthering these goals that have been presented is true. And so we will continue to find collaborators, volunteers that are here to form these committees, to figure out how we get to start these committees, figure out what committees we need to go to start having the conversation with decision makers. And we will continue this work because it's your vision and we believe in your vision for this city. So thank you everyone for attending tonight. Please grab a cookie on your way out, and if you would like to sign the ballot initiative for redistricting. Amy, did you want to talk about it really quick? No. Okay.
It's amazing.